Hello folks, strap yourselves in because today we've got some very juicy developments to get through. Today's video is specifically centered around Wuchang's censorship, the ongoing battles within China regarding both sides of this political attack, and just how serious and severe this entire ordeal has actually become. If you're new here, then I am the leading channel for all Wuchang related news, as well as a few other titles here and there too, and over the past 3 or so months, I have been covering the game quite in depth, and would now consider myself quite the Wuchang connoisseur. Now, you do not need to be aware of everything that has occurred thus far, because I will be dragging you all up to speed in record time, and I'm going to do that right now. Lindsay was founded in 2016, and by 2018 had announced their first ever game being AD 2047, a short VR experience that released on Steam in 2021 and marked their first official release. Sometime prior to its release, Lindsay had begun to work on Wuchang, where it was also first announced to the world in 2021, and shortly after received publishing from 505 Games. Between 2021 and 2025, the game did undergo quite the reshaping, and traded a darker and more Bloodborne-esque tone for something a little more colourful and less clone-like. The game also went from Unreal Engine 4 over to Unreal Engine 5 during development, which likely led to some of its issues upon release. Anyway, July 24th, 2025 rolls around, and the game releases to very mixed reviews. Despite being a solid and well-crafted experience in regards to gameplay, the game suffered a plethora of performance and stability issues that ultimately led to it being review-bombed into the dirt as a result. Since this, the game has undergone a series of updates which have addressed the vast majority of these issues, and has also since received some free updates for players in regards to a few new weapons and armor sets. Now, despite these issues, the game did still sell very well, especially given Lindsay's infancy and overall inexperience in direct comparison to much longer-standing studios. Wuchang's sales, popularity, and hype was more than good enough for a studio of Lindsay's caliber. However, the initial backlash had caused the game's potential success to very much suffer. Shortly after a handful of updates, players very quickly began to notice changes in regards to Wuchang's story and NPCs, where specific bosses would no longer remain dead after defeating them, and entire groups of enemies were no longer hostile. It was shortly discovered after this that the reason for these changes were due to backlash within China regarding how the Ming Dynasty and its historical figures had been depicted. The accusations were and are unwarranted, but a quick rundown would be: Wuchang is set in the late Ming Dynasty, and historically China had been invaded by Manchurians during this period. So the fact that the Manchurians are not in the game, whilst the actual historical hand figures are, was spun to look like the developers were playing favourites, as in protecting the Manchurians by not including them, whilst being biased against Han and the Ming Dynasty by including prominent figures and then having the player defeat them. It's silly, makes very little sense, and at this point has caused way more damage than it ever should have been able to. When Western players began to notice these changes, even further backlash ensued for Lindsay, as a portion of those Western players did voice their grievances regarding the censoring. And over the past few months, this has culminated into Wuchang being in this very strange, quite successful, but also stained position. That is a very brief summary of the events, but should bring you up to speed and make the rest of the video a lot more digestible. And fun fact, I was actually able to write that all up from memory, which is just to say, I'm getting pretty good at this, folks. So, with all of that covered, recently it was falsely announced by a few different news outlets, myself included, that Wuchang was not receiving DLC in any way, shape or form, and that Lindsay would be steering clear of historically accurate content moving forward. The original source for this information has since walked his comments back, and that basically leaves us back in the position of not knowing what to expect. During my coverage of this false information, I was contacted by Reddit user Coldbringer, and they ever so kindly supplied me with a few links to various different sources regarding Wuchang as a whole. During these conversations, and whilst diving through these links, it did become very apparent that this situation had escalated further within China, away from any Western eyes or coverage, and there have been some pretty serious developments that the vast majority of the rest of the world just do not know much about. This was always apparent to me anyway, but as I've mentioned in previous videos, it has been quite difficult at times to look into certain things, as a lot of the goings-on regarding this issue are mostly covered across Chinese media and the Chinese equivalents to Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, etc. Meaning the language barrier, translations, and the general lack of familiarity for myself has quite simply made the entire endeavour more challenging to cover than it otherwise would have been. Because of this, I covered the topic as much as I felt I could, but have since left it alone because I thought things would blow over and people would just move on. But that has not been the case, and due to everything I just mentioned before, I and most of the Western world have been unaware of just how much this entire endeavour has actually escalated. I've seen the odd thing here and there over the past month or so, but it wasn't until Coldbringer linked me to a handful of different articles that I began to really appreciate the divide between China and the Western world, and how if it weren't actually for the likes of myself, most of us would still be unaware of all of this. So, to start us off, one of the first things I was linked, and which we covered in the previous video, was this Facebook post regarding both the controversy and the no DLC announcement. The DLC announcement was once again stated as false, but the user also mentions this part right here. I, along with many Wuchang fans, have been combating the Wuchang radicals and all the Ming Dynasty fanboys for their cyberbullying of the Lindsay studio and producer himself. Now, for those who cannot comprehend anything other than it's the CCP, the Chinese state media CCTV actually covered the game in a positive way on the 30th of August in the midst of chaos to put a foot down on the witch hunt. From the very beginning, Lindsay understood that the game should stay well clear from ethnicity feuds, but unfortunately, that's what got them on the wrong side of the radicals mentioned above. I'm disappointed at how they patched the game, but given that the producer himself is rumoured to have received death threats, I cannot blame the studio. What ensued was an online battle between the pro-Wuchang gamers and the haters, which is still going on to this day. For those who are literate in Chinese and are interested, you'll be able to find all of the trails on Bilibili from both sides. Now, aside from myself and anyone who watched my previous video, the fact that this is still ongoing is very much new information for all of us outside of China. I would think that many others thought the same as myself and assumed that after the censoring, things would have quieted down, but apparently the same people are still unhappy with the developers, which at this point just throws even more salt in the wound of the censorship, as in, what was even the point of doing it if things haven't gotten any better? Anyway, just as I published my most recent Wuchang video, Coldbringer hit me up with another batch of links, this time leading to some very recent developments. At first, they sent me over this post regarding an apology letter that had been made public and sent to Lindsay CEO Jia Xian, apologising for essentially stalking and sending death threats. Now, the letter itself is quite lengthy, but a bit of a wild read, so I'll either have its full translation below within the description, or I'll find a link that will take you to it. For this video, I've cherry-picked the most interesting parts, but just before diving in, there are now 1 or 2 articles from just yesterday, and to pick just one of them, it would go as follows. GamerSky reported that due to the launch of the domestic Souls-like game Ming Dynasty Feathers of the Abyss, a well-known up-host revealed that the producer Jia Xian was subjected to cyberbullying and even maliciously sent reefs. Today, the incident has received a follow-up. A Weibo user named Chengdu Pistol Legs posted an apology. I solemnly apologise to Mr. Jia Xian and Chengdu Lingzi Technology Co. Limited. The accompanying image was a handwritten apology letter that mentioned sending reefs and making extreme remarks maliciously slandering the game. The apology letter mentioned that he had received severe criticism and education from the public security authorities. In order to make amends, he was willing to fully cooperate with the company to eliminate the negative impact of this incident. Now, as for the actual apology letter itself, I asked Coldbringer if they were able to track the full letter down in copy and paste format, and they were successful. So I ran this through Google Translator, and this is what it spat back out. After reading it through a couple of times, it does mostly make a lot of sense, but we are cherry picking here anyway. So the beginning of the letter goes as follows. Dear Mr. Jia Xian, with deep remorse and regret, I offer my sincerest apology for the inappropriate behaviour of my friends and I regarding your company's game, Feather of Ming Late Yandu, and your personal reef sending at 10 AM on July 27th, 2025. I participated in some online discussions about the game. During this time, I met a friend who works in Singapore. He shared a TikTok video with me and launched a variety of vicious and extreme attacks on the game and its creative team. He also shared some other comments, which I'm not reading out loud here, folks. These comments were completely unrelated to the game and promoted nationalism and incited ethnic hatred. Although I recognise that his views were extreme, exceeding the bounds of reasonable criticism, and even crossing the line of social morality and law, I failed to intervene. Instead, I was bewitched by his comments and joined in the attacks against the game and its creative team. When a friend suggested the dangerous idea of attacking Mr. Jia Xian offline, I, guided by other netizens, suggested sending reefs in retaliation. I even accepted a WeChat transfer from a friend abroad, which I used to purchase reefs and mailed them to Mr. Fu and his company. Everything I've said is true. I have the relevant chat and transfer records, which I have submitted to my lawyer and the police for review. I have also truthfully reported the above facts to the police and recorded them in my written record. At the time, I didn't realise that my actions not only violated the legal rights of Mr. Jia and Lindsay Company, but also constituted illegal activity. I hereby apologise again to Mr. Jia and the Lindsay Technology. My words and actions were not only unethical, but also illegal. They caused Mr. Jia Xian significant distress and harm, undermined the healthy development of the gaming industry and a harmonious online environment, and betrayed the public's expectations for rational communication and discussion. Now, there is a fair bit more in and around what we just read, but this is about as concrete as it gets in regards to proving that Jia Xian did indeed receive death threats. I should very much add that that is the intent of the reefs, as they are to symbolise funerals and death, and were essentially a way of saying, we know where you live and we want you dead. To add to this, the beginning of the previous article we not long just covered has a link to another article with the following title. The Uphost revealed the latest situation of Jia Xian in the late Ming dynasty, the feather of Yanzhou. He lost 9 kilograms in 7 days and was bullied online and sent a wreath. And folks, this article goes as follows. The domestic soul-like action RPG game Ming Dynasty Feather of Yanzhou was officially released on July 24th. When the game was first released, it was criticised by many players due to its optimization, rewards, and game background. Its evaluation on Steam once dropped to a tide of bad reviews, and the situation was not optimistic. A few days ago, the B Station Uphost posted talking about a recent situation of Jia Xian, the producer of the End of Ming Dynasty, The Feather of Yanzhou, which said, alive, lost 9 kilograms in 7 days, and the weight loss career was a great success. Supporting services include opening boxes, harassing phone calls, squatting, following, and sending reeves. In the comment area, many players expressed anger about this, believing that this behaviour of cyberbullies has involved illegal crimes. It's worth noting that Miss Zenzi had previously visited Lindsay Technology to meet with Jia Xian, the producer of Ming Late The Feather of Yanzhou. At midnight, Jia Xian was still alone testing the game, looking extremely exhausted and unwell. Therefore, Miss Zenzi's account has a certain degree of credibility. Now, the comments about him dieting are what I assume is him putting on a brave face and approaching the situation with some humour, which says a lot about him and is quite admirable. But I ultimately felt it was beyond important to try and share this with the Western world. We can all be forgiven for jumping on the bandwagon and saying censorship bad. I'm just as upset as the next gamer in regards to Wuchang's story being butchered. But as I've stated before, the devs very likely do feel the same as us. Prior to now, I didn't appreciate this issue in China all that much, but the reality of the situation is, this is a man who has poured his life into this company from 2016 with a boots-on-the-ground leadership philosophy, and he quite clearly is beyond passionate about this game. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to pour myself into something for so long, only for my biggest landmark to then be overshadowed with hatred and accusation, and then for that to manifest into death threats arriving at my own address. I just ask that you all actually try and appreciate the stress and worry this man must have felt at certain points over the past few months. None of this is to even touch on the fact that they themselves implemented these changes, likely due to how severe and bad things had gotten, which is just further stress and disappointment for Lindsay as a whole. It is very easy to stand back and blame Lindsay from a surface level, but can you truly blame a man who very likely felt his life may have been in danger, especially when butchering his own creation certainly wouldn't have been a decision he made lightly. All of this is to basically say the real issue here is once again politics. I'm not for a second going to sit here and pretend like I know Chinese politics, but I can for certain say it has had an incredibly negative impact on both Wuchang and Lindsay, when I feel it should never have been brought into the equation whatsoever. I did just reach out to Jia Xian a few days ago, and given what I now know, I probably will be attempting again very, very soon. But this time I will be sending both mine and your thoughts over to him, letting him know he has a sizable Western following that absolutely love his game, and wishing him the very best. I can see that this script is way longer than I anticipated, so I will wrap things up here for now, but I will be back just as soon as we do have more developments, folks. I don't fully know what the entire takeaway is from this one. I just feel Lindsay have had a really hard time. A lot of their hardships just aren't common knowledge outside of China, and it's about time we were all made aware of the actual facts surrounding this game. Anyway, that would be it for this one, folks. I'll be back soon with plenty more, and I do of course have a range of guide and news videos on the channel already, so do feel free to stop on by and check things out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, and until next time, peace.